I know for me that if I worked it from home too much, my wife would just kick me out of the house. Like it just wouldn't work.
All right, we're ready to roll. Let's go.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Good. How are you? Where are you? You working from home or is that the office?
Yeah, no, working from home today.
Right on. Do you do that a lot?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm definitely in the office for meetings but working from home like many people from the organization pretty regularly.
Is that something for you that started during the pandemic that got a little more normal, or was that something you were kind of incorporating into your day anyway prior to it?
Probably towards the pandemic more than anything, and still like to get together and have meetings and see people, of course. And I travel. I'm on the road, conferences or visiting, some of our branch locations. But try to make the most of my, day for sure. So at home, I would say at least half the time.
I know that you and I are going to be in Miami in a few days for a conference. And one of the things I noticed was on the agenda was some speakers talking about remote work, sort of how it's changed. I mean, the mortgage industry, but just, how people are managing through some of that, not being face-to-face with people quite as much. Have you noticed that, with AnnieMac and you as the president of the company, have you noticed from the top down that there's been an impact to the positive or the negative? I'm probably a little bit of both, I would guess.
Yeah, we sent a survey out to our employees on, what they wanted to do, whether it was continue to work from home or come in for a couple of days a week. And, the overall feedback, for those that could work from home successfully, was that they wanted, to continue, to do that. I think it gives them some flexibility in their day. No gas, traffic, tolls, so some additional income there, and being able to go to a kid's soccer game at 4 and jumping back on the computer at 6:30 to finish the day, instead of getting home at 6 and frustrated with traffic. And, the last thing you want to do is jump back on and, complete your day. You're just kind of done that way. So, we have found, because we can measure productivity, for majority of our roles, that we are getting more productivity, I would say happier employees. And then, for those that don't have, a perfect at-home working situation, they come into the office if they wish. Some people a couple of days a week. But for, team meetings, we definitely like to get together and be face to face.
So big thing you just said is that you track it. You have a mechanism to be able to track productivity. Is that something you implemented when you needed to implement it once things changed, or was that something that was already happening and now you were just maybe putting a different set of eyes on it?
Yeah, already happening, prior to. So we could kind of have the before and after look. Some roles that we weren't tracking, that we can do today, that are, less productivity driven, but we were always tracking, before and after.
Sticking on this topic for a minute, because I'm really intrigued by it. I've noticed that with our group, it was the younger employees. And if you read the news, the news will tell you it's the younger employees that don't want to come into the office. They want to be able to work from home. But it really was the younger employees that were screaming to get back in the office. I think the point that you were kind of making earlier was part of that is clearly because they don't have an environment that's comfortable for them to be able to work from home. I think that was part of it. The other part from a productivity perspective that I was intrigued by was I would think that for those that are maybe newer for you, take a loan officer assistant as an example, or someone who's early stages on the sales side that needs to progress. I would worry that being remote doesn't transfer knowledge from those that have learned how to be a good salesperson, how to follow up and follow through effectively, how to overcome objections or put out fires. Do you notice that that's been a challenge with some of the folks that are maybe newer to the industry on the sales side or trying to increase their business from point A to point B?
I think, from a loan officer assistant standpoint, we call them loan partners, they getting them through a training program up to speed face to face is something that is important. Being side by side with their loan officer and learning is, gets them from speed to production, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely are continuing, to do that right now, face to face, getting them through training. And then, they could be the people that I was referring in the office 3 days a week instead of, 5, as an example.
I know for me that if I worked it from home too much, my wife would just kick me out of the house. Like it just wouldn't work.
There you go. A lot of that going on in my house.
I'd be in the basement with all the doors shut and like, don't come up here. Don't make any noise. I don't want to hear you in my house.
Change of scenery is always good, so.
Yeah, for sure. I'm
stuck
also
at home and then you need to go into the office for a couple of days.
It is. I mean, that separation between home and work for some people is a really important thing. I think for me, it is. I'd like to know that when I come home from work, that at some level, my wife's not seeing me with my, she calls it the model match face. Like, don't give me the model match face when you walk in the house. Like, be the guy that I've married. So, jumping straight into this remote thing, but I wanted to ask you, president of AnnieMac, how big is AnnieMac?
About 1,100 employees, just shy of 1,100 employees, and did right around $6 billion last year.
Yeah, I mean, so nice sized company for sure, national footprint. You've been the president for a couple of years, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
But you've been with the same company, the same under the same umbrella for
about 17 years. So I started with the organization from the very beginning, and as in a leadership a role, but just got the title, I guess, of president a couple of years ago.
But that smile on your face tells me you were kind of already doing the work, maybe.
Well, I guess that's how you move up. You start doing the work, and the promotion comes later.
The title comes later.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, the title comes later.
How?
For sure.
So being with the same company for that long, I mean, that's pretty abnormal in this industry, especially with an independent mortgage banker. From just my observations over the last 20 years or so, a lot of those, folks that are in executive level positions, a lot of those are big banks, big depositories, where the progression is maybe a little bit more defined over some period of time. What do you think is the reason for, like, I'm curious to get looking back now, the last 18 years or so, what was it about what you were doing or where your head was that maybe, because I'm sure not every day was a good day, Ryan. I mean, you've been through tough times. The industry's been through tough times. Can you think of some things that maybe kind of put you on a track to be in the same place for that period of time?
Yeah, it's, being with good people, that you enjoy, working with, that has similar mindset, similar goals, understand that culture's, an important part of the business. Being a privately held organization, we can be nimble, quick with decisions. We're not reporting into a board per se, or, nor do we have, any outside investors. So you come in, with the group of people that you've been working with for a long time, that you either become, family, and so it's important, I think, as a leader of an organization, to do just that, lead people in the right way. And fortunately, in a good situation, with our leadership team and a great group of employees. We have super high retention rates at AnnieMac, something that I'm proud of. Of course, we have goals every single year, and but those are our goals. They're not influenced by the outside, which makes it great.
So let's be selfish for just a minute, though, because part of that philosophy, I mean, I hear you. You surround yourself with good people. You're loyal to those people. Those people are loyal to you. I know that there's others at the company that have been there a long time as well. But there's got to be something about you also that I would think maybe your mindset or how you focus on things when it's a bad day or a bad month or a bad quarter or a bad year that keeps you focused on what we do next versus what do I do next? Have you ever given that much thought, like what it is about the way you see things or react to things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not your typical A personality salesperson, for sure, but I look at things, inside our organization, everyone has their own individual goals, and, how can we support those people, those employees to achieve their goals? At the end of the year, I'm more concerned about, how many of our loan officer business plans were we able to achieve, versus the company number, because they always roll up to what the company wants to do. So I think when you have that type of mindset of, you really want to support your people to hit their goals year after year, it just trickles down, and we really understand who our customers are, both internally and externally. I've been at organizations in the past where you have walls between sales and operations. We just have, families, to help here, and everyone understands that. And, before that file goes to the next department, make sure that you give your best effort from a quality standpoint to make sure that you've done, a great job on your end. And it's worked. A lot of communication is important, especially through the pandemic. We have an all company call every 2 weeks. Most of the companies on there every 2 weeks, transparent with what our goals are, what we want to do, what's going on. And, we also have fun outside of work. We're involved in our communities, and we share a lot of that throughout the organization. And that's, been an important part of, I think, having fun outside of work. It's not just about going to a happy hour together. It's about, I'm making a difference in other people's lives, for sure.
I noticed that you were a sociology major.
I was.
Do you think that part of the way that you react to things, the way you view things, what you just told me, comes back to some of that? I'm also curious why you were a sociology major. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So the reason is because I enjoyed the classes, and I had no freaking idea what I wanted to do.
Right.
I know that I went to college, had fun, some weeks more fun than I should have, and enjoyed those classes, and just went through. I think if I could do it over again, I probably would have picked a different major, and maybe those classes help mold the person I am today. But no one goes to college for mortgages. There's so many different stories, and I love having conversations with people because how they ended up there is either through friends, family, or by chance, or so it's always fun to understand how they ended there for sure.
No, it is something that separates this industry from others without a doubt. I was having breakfast with someone local this morning, and he's an anesthesiologist, and he does really well for himself. He's got a nice life for sure. And I've known him for a long time. But when we sat down, he looked and he said, "Okay, I just have to ask you, what is it that you do for a living again?" And I just sort of laughed, and we talked about it a little bit, but he commented on the fact that when you, and this is his statement, but I'm not a doctor or an anesthesiologist, so this is what he said, when you go to medical school to become a doctor or a surgeon or an anesthesiologist, the hard work is in school. Not to say that the hard work isn't with what they do for a living, but he said, you reach a point where things are pretty much kind of the same every day. Like you get used to doing a certain type of surgery, or you get used to working with a certain type of patient. And he said, I don't know that I have the part of my brain like maybe you do, where you went to college, you did fine, but you just had to figure it out. And then the rest of your life, I mean, running a mortgage company, aren't you kind of continuing to just figure it out every day and solve problems every day that aren't in a textbook? You can't just open up the book and say, oh, that's how you do that. You learn from others, but it's interesting how that mindset's a little bit. I mean, you said maybe I would major in something else, but why? I mean, you've obviously done pretty well.
Yeah, it's true. Some people know what they want to do, which is I think fewer. When they go to college. I have an older daughter who's studying in cybersecurity, and she knows what she wants to do. Mm-hmm. My youngest in 11th grade, she has no idea, and she probably won't. Until she's mid-20s, and she'll figure it out, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see which one's more successful, however you define success. It could be defined in many ways, but it is definitely interesting, when you look back and say, well, what would I have done differently, if anything, of course. But yeah, I mean, the mortgage business, for me, every day is so much different, and I think that's what makes it exciting. And, been in this industry for 20 plus years and continuing to learn, continuing to collaborate with my peers and to read and it's ever changing. I mean, what happened 2 years ago is totally different. I mean, wow. I mean, we could look over those 20 years and what the markets have done, what the industry, the changes for sure, and it's going to continue to do so, in the years ahead. So that's what makes it exciting, for sure. Different problems every day, and different opportunities. I enjoy kind of looking ahead and planning, trying to separate our organization from what we do and add more value to our employees and our referral partners.
So I want to talk about Radford for a second. I don't know if I ever told you. I don't know if I ever told you the story. I was invited to a basketball camp when I was in high school at Radford. And I think I was, between my freshman and sophomore year. So I was just a little kid. And my dad drops me off, and there was summer school going on at Radford at the time. And it didn't take me and all the other boys at this camp more than about 5 minutes to realize all we saw was girls. Now that's not all we saw. But then you start doing some research, because, Radford had a nice basketball facility, and they had great outdoor basketball courts. It was a beautiful campus. And so back then, what I remember the most about Radford was that the girl to guy ratio was like 6-to-1 or something like that. So, I don't know if that was your experience when you were at Radford, but that's what stands out to me when I think about Radford University.
Yeah, well, when I was in high school, I went to visit some friends that were, older than me, and so I went to visit the school, fell in love with it, had fun, of visiting, and yeah, it used to be a nursing school back in the 70s, so it was all girls, and then became co-ed, and I think when I was there in the 90s, it was probably 5-to-1, so that was definitely could have been part of my decision making.
Maybe, sort of.
Yeah,
So,
kind of.
what did you do out of college? What was the first thing that you did? I mean, of course, this is leading me to the question of how do you end up in the industry?
Yeah, it's interesting, story for sure. I ended up, I grew up in Virginia, moved to North Jersey, a girl I was dating at the time, and looking for a job. Thought sales would be a great job for me. I sat down with headhunter or recruiter, and went through that process and ended up at a company called Champion Mortgage, who's no longer around. They were purchased by a company called Kube, and went in to interview for a loan officer position. Because I had no experience, they wouldn't hire me. But they did actually offer me a telemarketing type role, where at the time Champion Mortgage provided leads, for their loan officers. So it's more of a call center type environment. And I worked my way up to a loan officer, but I would only call leads. They called them second chance leads that the loan officers couldn't sell, the customer said no. I started, jumping up in the funding, the loan funding ranks, I guess you could say. And even with those canceled leads, I was jumping up the leaderboard. So very quickly they turned me into a loan officer where I was, and climbed up to the top of the leaderboard, and then leadership kind of became a passion of mine. And I started, I was recruited over by a company called H&R Block Mortgage, known for taxes, but it was a startup where we were dealing with, the tax clients and providing them with mortgages, and was top loan officer there. And then opened up a branch that turned into a region, that turned into, me moving to Boston, and then down to Pennsylvania, where I currently live, and more into a district manager role, where I oversaw several offices and processing, and decided, I wanted to go out on my own at that time, and met up with our CEO, Joe, and that was 17 years ago. So that's kind of a quick version. No, my first no, you're no experience, can't be a loan officer. But it was a fun ride, and I think one that, really, from that very beginning, getting that no and then turning it into an opportunity and becoming a top salesperson. I don't know if that would have happened, without that experience.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I think so much of whoever we are is based upon either someone or some entity telling us no, or just failing, period. And then deciding sort of, well, what is it that you're going to do next? Is that failure going to be a positive thing? You take something away from it, learn from it, and then move forward and be better. Or do you start looking around the next corner? Well, I guess mortgage isn't going to be my career. I need to go sell pharmaceutical equipment or medical equipment. What can you pinpoint a time early on when you thought to yourself, well, okay, this is my career, not just this is a job out of college that I just need to make some money so I can start to take care of myself? Was there a trigger where you realized I really like this and this is going to be my career?
It was probably pretty early on, once I very diligent about setting goals and understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing, what's my why behind, these goals, and really keeping that top of mind, in my day to day. But I would say after I started to experience some success, from that first no, we're not going to hire you from this job. And I went in and proved to myself, that I can do this and I can do it well. And I'm doing something that is changing, lives in a positive way for people, and that, whether it's saving them money or enabling them to, buy a home, the life-changing events, for sure. And just having, that positive feedback from the clients that I'm working with, was a driver in itself, and tag that on to, a career where you can make good income. So those two things together, I knew this is what I wanted to do. And then I wanted to teach other people how to do it, and change their lives and go help them, buy their first car or their, first house, and, change the lives of the people that I was able to, lead. And that's just a great feeling in itself as well. So you're helping employees and clients at the same time.
Well, and I've got to know you, and I know that that's real about you. It's easy for people to say that. I think a lot of people say that, but I've heard enough people that work with you say the same thing about you. So that, I joke around. We live in a democracy. We have elected officials, but I'm always curious that I'd rather, instead of those elected officials go up on stage and debate and answer difficult questions, I'd sort of like to see their sphere of influence have to answer the same questions. So I think you can tell a lot about a person when you know who it is they surround, like who's in their inner circle, who has their ear, who mentors them, who gives them advice. I've always said this for a long time. Like, I watched the presidential debates like all of us forever. And I think I sure would like to know who are the 2 or 3 people that are closest to this person. I'd like to know how they would answer these questions. And I've learned about you through other people. I know that's a real thing. Does it, and one quick story about that, I had a friend who had been nominated for a pretty high level government position. And through that process, the FBI actually had to interview some close friends and associates of this person. And so I saw that kind of unfold, and the questions that they were asking me that were going to, that this person's opportunity was going to hinge on maybe some of these answers. I don't know. I don't think we do that enough, but I know a lot about you through others in a positive way. Let me ask you though, along those lines, does it bother you? I mean, you're motivated by other people's success. You're motivated by culture, I think. You're motivated by how you can impact other people. You said you did it when you were a loan officer. You're doing it as a leader. Do you have any concern about people that in this industry that are only motivated by money? You probably work with plenty.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are people that are motivated by money, for sure. And that's fine. I mean, you have to understand, I think, the deeper why, why are they motivated by money? Can it be their parents, didn't have the opportunity to make money, or, they're second generation from X country. And, so I think it's okay to be motivated by money if it's, something behind it. There's a difference between, I think, having money and people, seeing that you have money versus, people don't know you have it too, but, it's a whole different, conversation. But I personally like to, have a relationship where I can understand, the why behind, their goals, because that's when you can really form relationships and get behind people, because it's more than just the money 99% of the time, if that is their goal. And that they just might tell you that's their goal until you can peel back, some layers and really learn about the person and dig in deeper with their goals. And that's what makes it rewarding, because it's always more about, just the money. And if you're, as a leader, if you're just stopping at that point, you're not really digging in deep enough with your employees, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that, because I think the answer to lots of questions can have then the follow-up question of, what does that do for you? If that's your goal, I'll give you an example. I spoke to somebody this morning who had mentioned that their next goal is to become a regional manager. They're currently a branch manager and a very successful branch manager. But when we ask the question, what is the outcome of being a regional manager that creates value for you? Why is that the motivator? When they started answering the question, they kind of realized to themselves that being a regional manager is not what they want. It really wasn't the title that they wanted. There were things that they thought came along with that. There were some geographic opportunities that came along with it. There were some leadership opportunities. There was the ability to have a voice within an organization. And it was almost like you could feel their wheels turning, that nobody had ever asked them that question. Nobody ever challenged on that. And I think that's what you're talking about. It sounds to me like you make it a point to then sit down and say, how does that create value for you? What is your why behind it? Do you find that a lot of people don't know how to answer that question when you start digging into what is your why?
No, I think if you give them time, I find just the opposite, just the opposite, and I think you need a relationship to have, some of those conversations. But I find most people, will sit down and talk about it, and when you look at that versus I want to go make $200,000 a year or whatever that goal is, it becomes more important for that person, to achieve that income level, because, it's 3 or 4 different reasons. They want to send their kid to college, they want to be able to provide for their, mom who is single and without a job, and they, there's reasons behind it, and it becomes more real, than just a number, for sure.
I'm curious, along your kind of journey in the industry, points within that journey that were maybe low points for you, like moments of what felt like failure, and maybe kind of questioning, do I make a change? And I don't mean companies, but maybe even industry. Like, do I need to tweak something? We all remember early 2000s, the big recession, and then of course 2008, 2009, when the world was coming to an end. It may be something else. Can you recall moments where you had a bit of a do I turn the corner or not moment? And then whatever that is, how did you handle it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, being in the industry 20 plus years, you have your ups and downs, market related. I saw the subprime days and, 2008, 9, kind of gone through it all. I think, what I've learned is you're going to have great years and there's going to be struggling years. And I think anybody, if you look over, 2020 and 21, as a loan officer, you've had probably 2 of your best back-to-back years, that you've ever had in your career. And, if you want to keep those same paychecks moving forward, you need more, realtors or whatever your source of your referrals are. But I would also, look at 2020, 21, 22, 23, and then divide by 4, right? So with great years are going to become, struggling years. I personally have never thought about leaving the industry, because I think I understand that, 1 tough year, 2 tough years, is part of the industry. And I think and salespeople's mind majority of the time is, every year is just going to be better. And I think if every year was the same, that statement could be true, but, they're not in control of inventory issues or rates or, what's going on in wartime or, things that are out of your control. So I think if you just come in with a mindset, to understand that every year is going to be a little bit different, and that's okay. Put you in a better place. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Well, and you made a comment that kind of goes, and by the way, what I'm getting ready to say is not a knock on public companies, but you mentioned, look at the last 4 years, and then, let's look at the averages across that period of time. There's a little bit of a culture difference, right, between a private company and a public company. Public, you're looking at quarterly earnings, and there's a different level of pressure that's maybe coming down, and the street feels it at some level. I think you're mentioning more of a long-term approach, and then making our left-hand turns and right-hand turns based upon averages that we're seeing over a longer period of time, versus one bad thing happens and the world's coming to an end. However, I think we can both agree that a lot of salespeople, that's what makes them great, and it also what makes them challenging, is that every little thing, the sky's falling. And then, for you and your leadership and your management, that can be exhausting. That can be a big part of your challenge. Thinking about that right now, the world we're living in at the moment is not the world we were living in 6 months ago, 8 months ago. That is for sure. The industry as a whole, are there things that concern you right now a little bit more than others? Like, what's top of mind for you that you think, okay, here's 2 or 3 problems as an industry, or maybe as a company, that we need to focus on and make sure that we're creating solutions going forward?
Yeah, it's coming into 2022, January and February, are always tough months. We have a seasonality of our business, applications slow down in December, which have an effect on January. And then you get into spring market, and February applications start to increase. And, we didn't see that the last couple of years due to the amount of refi business, that was coming in. So I think being able to foresee, some of those things in October, November, and prepare as an organization, and communicate, that down, all of last year. It's like everyone's doing well, busy, life is great, but it's not always going to be like that. Like, if you want the same paycheck in 2022 as you had in 2021, you need more referral partners. So you need to get back, face to face with referral partners, go deeper, add more to work with, and do it now. Don't wait until everything is dried up, to do that. So that was a message, that has been spoken about for a long time. And of course, those that got it and understood it, have been working towards it. And those that are not are saying, hey, my paychecks are less than what they have been, for sure. So it's a preparation, I think, for the tough times. We're in a time of inventory issues, for sure. We have borrowers that have been sitting out there and making 12 to 20 offers on homes, and just have given up, because of the amount of offers on those homes. We as an organization came out with our cash buyer program, which rolled out in December in New Jersey, to where we're turning our clients into cash buyers. We do an underwrite up front, and AnnieMac, purchase the home, and they can purchase back to us to really help with that issue. So, inventory, and we're probably going to be in, this situation for the next 2 to 3 years, is definitely a concern, for sure.
You mentioned the cash buyer program, and I'm sure there's other examples as well. Do you make it a point to carve out sort of war room time with yourself and other strategic leaders at the company to just whiteboard what might seem like ridiculous ideas, but things that could ultimately become solutions to problems that either you currently have or you foresee coming down the road? I guess what I'm asking is, I'm curious if you make it a point on some sort of scheduled basis to just sit down and chop up ideas that ultimately can lead to the next progressive solution.
Yeah, great question. I do spend a lot of time in that space, and with different departments and different leaders throughout the organization, because I want to be ahead of it. We are a very nimble organization. We can move quickly, well capitalized, and and don't have that outside influence on you have to do this or that. So that's helpful in itself. But we are working on things for 2023, 2024. So organization has done well, especially in the last couple of years, and we want to use that money to build for the future. So whether it is in the file flow and operations of a loan and automating a lot of that experience, I've ultimate goal to really change that processing time of when a client gets accepted in an offer until they can close and fund. We should be able to do that whole process in 14 days. There's a lot of technology out there that I think the mortgage industry is lagging. So we're spending a lot of time there. We're spending a lot of time with our referral partners because we want to understand what they need to grow their business, right? I mean, we're there to support them. So when I can talk to a referral partner, understand what their goals are, what they need, and be able to partner with them, and instead of just making it a transaction, then I have a referral partner for life. So we also spend a lot of time in that space, and trying to solve their needs as well. Eric.
Do you, projecting out the next 5-10 years, so much of what you just said goes back to getting to know someone, like them, trust them, understand what's important to them, what their goals are, what they're struggling with, and then figure out a way to create value for them. It's relationship. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why you love what you do, is that everything is about relationships. Projecting out though, forever we've been talking about the role of the originator and technology replacing potentially that originator. Certainly I have my thoughts on this, but as you project out 5-10 years, what do you see as the role of the originator? Do you think it goes away? Do you think it just changes? I'm sure you've thought about it. I'm sure you guys have strategized around it. Where is your head there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know people feel differently than I do, but I believe, and we've spoken to a lot of people. When I say a lot of people, I mean clients, about this topic, and I think people want the advice. They want the hand holding. I think in the future you may see more people do certain activities online, and I think that's okay. We're seeing it today. A realtor will give the customer the point of sale application, and the customer fills it out, and then the loan officer's on the phone and talking to them. I do not see the loan officer's role much different. I think this is their most expensive bill. This is scary, whether it's a purchase or a refinance. They want the expertise to drive them to a successful and as pain-free of a transaction. I think what happened in 2008, 10, scared some of the millennials. They saw some of their parents lose their houses or struggling to get mortgages. What used to be so easy to get a mortgage, where you could do stated, is, and the mindset has changed to, it's a very difficult process. So having that advisor working with the clients, and when I say we've gotten feedback, like even the millennial groups, focus groups that we've spoken with, they want that person to help. Maybe they'll do some preliminary stuff, like I said, and fill out the application, and that's fine. But I think the overall consensus is we want that expert, and that's how we're planning the future of our business.
So not planning the future around loan officers with virtual reality headsets on selling loans in the metaverse. That's not part of the plan.
Not part of our plan.
Trading crypto and somebody's going to do it. You and I both know that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think some people are planning down that route. It's definitely not our approach. You know, we really want a great experience. I think a lot of referral partners that get a customer with an online type lender might, you know, have not as good of experience as someone that you know is on the street, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and look, and you use the word advisor. I mean, there's decisions that I don't make unless I advise with certain people. I'm going to ask for their advice, right? Whether it's a financial decision or a decision that relates to the education of my children or whatever the case may be. I can research all I want, but I sure would like somebody that I trust to sit across from me and say, this has been my experience based upon what you shared with me. This is the route. Even if you don't use me, this is the route that I would take, or I would at least consider taking. So a couple other questions, then we'll break. I'll let you get back to your day job. What do you do outside of the industry? Like you know, maybe not your why so much, but what do you enjoy doing? What gives you juice, as I like to say it, that has nothing to do with mortgage banking?
Yeah, you know, we all need our time away from the office, I guess you could say. You know, it's been different over the years. You know, right now I have a daughter in college and one in 11th grade. Spend a lot of my weekends on the soccer or lacrosse fields. So I'm kind of at that point. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm empty, a nester per se, but I enjoy, you know, doing stuff in the community. I'm really passionate about spending time there, and I love sports. You know, whether it's playing or going to a sporting event, and you know, so I'm avid golfer. Not as good as I used to be. I just can't find the time. I think maybe once my youngest is out of the house, I'll have a little bit more time. Right. You know, also play soccer and basketball in some different leagues, and you know, really enjoy you know, the community that I live in ultimately. But spending time with family, friends, it's never a dull moment, for sure.
I mean, I'm jealous. I wish I could still play soccer and basketball. My body has failed me. And so if I do play, I can't walk for a couple of days afterwards. And my brain still thinks I'm 25 years old. So it doesn't understand why I can't do the things that I used to do.
Without a doubt, believe me, I experienced a lot of that. It's been definitely battled some injuries over the year, and same mindset. You know, you wake up the next day and you're like, I'm not 25 anymore.
No, sir. What do you think you'd be doing if you weren't doing this?
Oh, wow. What would I be doing? Work-wise?
Yeah. How would you pay the bills?
How would I pay the bills? Man, I don't know. I don't know of anything else that I, you know, really enjoy as much as I do. I mean, this is what I know, you know, as far as an income, you know, related role. I mean, I love coaching, you know. I coached my daughter up to a certain age, and then, you know, enjoyed that. I don't know if you know, that's more volunteer type work, but I'm going to stick with mortgages. You know, it's what I know, what I love, what I'm passionate about every single day when I wake up. Not gifted enough to be a professional athlete. I guess, you know, that's what I would enjoy if I wasn't doing that. But I guess you need a little bit different skill that I wasn't born with.
Yeah, I reached that point a long time ago myself. It was a painful thing to say, but it's also one of those things I think I knew my entire life. It's just there's a point at which that window has now shut. Hey, anything that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
Man, Oh, I've enjoyed, us speaking with you. I mean, you guys are doing some fabulous stuff. What are you seeing right now in the industry as far as I guess, people looking for other opportunities, going through kind of what I was talking about making less income. I mean, you talk to a lot of loan officers out there and understand what their experience. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing noise that we didn't see over the last couple of years. To your point, the economic environment was such that average producers were doing 3, 4, 5, 6x than maybe what they've ever done before. And with that kind of activity, with that kind of economic success, it's really easy, I think, to take your eyes off of the ball of the things that are not only the most important to you, but also those things that are most important to where your business is coming from, your partners, your referral sources that you were stating earlier. I think sometimes we have to remember, you don't have to remember because I think this comes naturally for you, but as an industry or any industry, that the people that you're looking to expand with at the end of the day are human beings, and they've got fears that are really normal fears, right? So if my income is going to drop by 25% due to market conditions that I can't control, how do I replace that gap? And I think we're starting to hear a little bit of that, but then there's also other emotion that's coming into play, right? I mean, we've got geopolitical stuff that's going on that we turn on the news and it can be frightening. It can be confusing. People are paying more at the pump than they've paid, in a long time. They're paying more for everything they buy at the grocery store. And a lot of those things I find are emotional even more than it is math. The math is actually easy. It's the emotion that gets really, really difficult. And so what I encourage leaders like yourself to do that are strategically looking to grow their business with people that can bring or generate volume revenue or groups or acquisitions or whatever the case may be are the things that I think come naturally for you, Ryan, but maybe don't come naturally for others. And that is, don't just focus on the math. You have to be willing to take the time to go through a process that puts you in a position to be a trusted advisor to that person. And then eventually that person may decide to work with you, not because they're leaving something that's broken, but because they're going towards something that they see creates value for them and their why and their referral partners. The challenge with that on both sides of the equation is that it's a process. It's not an event. And if you treat it like an event, you're going to find that you're going to have retention, attrition issues that then ultimately go along with it. But I think in a broad brush, the answer to the question is there's definitely emotion that's around right now that wasn't around 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And I think that can be a really, really positive thing, both for the individual that needs to fill a gap or has a goal that maybe they haven't really thought of for the last couple of years. But also for the leadership locally, regionally, nationally that's looking to grow their platform. Two things, are you engaging with people that you should be engaging with anyway and taking the time to build trust and be an advisor to them? But are you also doing it for the people that are already under your umbrella, for the people that are already on your team? It's surprising to me how often, we will have conversations with individuals that'll be about a pain or a want that they have, but their leadership doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And that's a problem on both sides, right? Why are you as an employee, a partner, why are you not communicating these things? But there must be a reason. Maybe they feel like they can't communicate it or that they're not going to get any value from those that they work with. And I think we're in a moment where we're going back to a little bit of the blocking and tackling, to use a sports analogy, right? Where the last couple of years you could miss a whole lot of blocks and you can miss a whole lot of tackles and you still felt like you were winning every game every month. Well, that market's changed and now we got to get back to the basics. And the basics is a process. It's not an event. It takes time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And it's so important if someone's changing companies. It's not all about the money because the money is short term, and I think you need to be competitive, for sure. But I think more importantly is being able to, be super transparent, have those conversations, because I don't want to hire anybody that I don't think is not going to retire, at the organization. So honesty, transparency, very important. When you can recruit, I guess you could say, with facts, showing people's successes, how they've grown their purchase business since they joined the organization, and when you can talk to somebody about their goals and put together a plan to help them achieve that, those are the conversations that's needed, because that sign-on bonus, yeah, you're gonna need something, I get it, but it's gonna go away, so does that person feel, and do you feel like it's someone, that can be successful at your organization, someone that you can help achieve their goals, and someone that's going to retire there, and if you have yeses there, then it can be a good fit. But you're right, it's a process, and I think it's important for everyone to understand and to be patient through that process as well.
It is tough to do when the branch or the originator or the region or the organization as a whole just saw volume drop off by 10% or 15% or 25%, because the instinct is I got to go fill that gap now. But the problem is, if we move too quickly, you're going to spend a lot of money doing what you think is filling the gap, and you're going to create a much bigger gap for yourself, which is why I don't like the word recruiting for what you do and for what we do. You're building relationships with people that have trusted relationships. That's where their business comes from. And at the end of the day, that person's name is really the brand. It's not the brand of the company. That may be the mousetrap. Those people aren't looking for jobs. The pain that those people have, sometimes they don't even know what the pain is. Like when you ask people, what is your why? Sometimes they probably have to really think about it. They need to look in the mirror and they need to take a breath and figure out what it is that actually motivates them, and what are the outcomes of the goals that they have, which may help them change their goal. But you're not posting a job and then finding people to have a specific skill set, interviewing 5, bringing 2 in for corporate and hiring 1. It's not the way that it works on the production side of this industry. And that's a really hard thing to do when volume is dropping. At the same time, it's also when there's opportunities out there, because people they're doing a self-audit that maybe they haven't done for 2 years now. And it's the perfect time to step in there and build that relationship with them. And then, you kind of, you ran through it in a very succinct and perfect way. It's kind of a drop the mic moment, so I don't really need to talk that much about it anymore. But the reality, though, is that you're probably also comfortable shaking hands and moving on from someone that you've been building a relationship with, if you know they can bring you volume, but you also realize that there's something that you can't do for them. And by the way, when that happens, sometimes 6 months later they come back to you for all the right reasons, because they know they can trust you.
Yeah. No, it's true. I tell people all the time, if when you make a move to a new organization, you need to really think, is this better for my referral partners? Because at the end of the day, what's good for them is going to be good for yourself. And if it's not, then it might not be the right opportunity. But having that mindset, I think, is important to anyone that's possibly looking to move organizations, because that's your bread and butter, as a loan officer. So, of course, you're making a move for yourself, but your referral partners need to be top of mind, and I think that decision, when speaking with the right organizations, becomes very clear at that time.
It is a process of evaluation. It's not one thing. It's not what are my basis points. It's not how quickly do you close loans. It takes time to go through that process on both sides of the equation to determine whether or not it's a good opportunity to partner together. And so, no, I agree with you. You and I could have this conversation for 2 hours, because it goes down one heck of a rabbit hole. But Ryan, thanks for coming on the walk. I knew it would be easy. I knew it would be fun. Next time we're together, which is going to be really soon, I'm not going to play a real pickup basketball game with you, but if you can find a goal, I'll play horse or something with you. That's
There
about
you
all I got
go.
left.
All right. I'm with you, buddy. It was good seeing you. Thanks so much, Eric.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Ryan.
Take care, man.